student community.
Thank you very much, Taran. On to you.
Yeah, hi Anil. So
Yeah.
I think it was high time that the education policy needed very strong fundamental changes. And as Vinay also said that, this education policy actually aims to make the students future ready. They are, skilling them with the right set of courses. So I am very impressed with that. One good thing I like about this is the vernacular. I think that will reduce the churn in the students who complete the courses. I think that's very beautiful part of it. One more thing which I came across was, the coding is introduced in from the sixth standard itself. And I think, the technology is part of the future. As you read the book Zero to One, Peter Thiel says that, bytes over bricks, right? The future will be more into tech. So I think coding is something which is very important skill for the students. And I think with this new curriculum, I think we are trying to incorporate that. And I think this is a very welcoming move.
Thank you again. Now the best, as I said. Don't get offended, my co-panelist. We have to give respect to the lady. Anshu, your views.
So as soon as I opened the newspaper in the morning and it said that they're going to lower the stakes for 10th and 12th grade, that was a breath of fresh air. It was much needed. The focus has been too much on marks and rote learning, and the shift to a holistic approach and to other skills like communication and cognitive, logical skills is really going to help our population, and especially the underprivileged at that because they don't have the support system or the capacity to enroll their kids in classes and all to exceed at that level. So the whole approach that has shifted from marks and is now taking a very holistic approach is was much needed and is the best thing that could happen to our education system. Because so many times even we face such problems when we are hiring admin people and they're 10th pass or 12th pass and they don't have basic communication skills or basic numeracy skills, and then they're jobless or they have to take a low grade job. So if we can just improve those skills, there will be so many more job opportunities for that strata of the society. So that is my biggest takeaway.
What about the 3 to 6, which is a segment you're serving? I thought you'd be very excited about the 3 to 6 part. They've been in the informal sector, a lot of them. You have those kiddie schools or the preschools.
So but now know, or we've all heard that 80% of the brain development happens when a child is below 6 years or 7 years.
Yeah.
Again, when we talk about tier 1 cities or privileged parents, their kids go to preschools, play schools, nurseries, and they have access to all of these things. Again, this will be a huge shift for the underprivileged or people who don't have the support system. They will have a formal, structured approach when their kids can be enrolled in schools, which will provide them with this exposure. But at the same time, I'm concerned about what kind of education will that be. It should be more exploratory, in my opinion, and not be structured on, not be pressurized. They should not be pressurized in learning letters and numbers at that age. It should be all more about play oriented rather than structured formal education. Because we all know that the developed countries, or you take the example of Germany, where studies don't even start till the child is 6 years or 7 years. So what they're going to teach that child at that age is going to be very important. Because preschools for us have changed from that approach of letters to a more IB approach where it's more fun, free play, and exploratory. And if they implement that, then it'll be great, because you don't want a 3-year-old child to be pressurized. And that too, from that society, it'll just get worse.
Sure. Thank you very much. Now let's move on to what we are here to talk about, content in the new age. So, and the role of creativity. So how important is content quality as a differentiating factor to attract students and to better explain the complicated topics that we've been so used to? So who wants to take a shot at this?
Oh, first of all, the title, that secret sauce. So my point is that it's not so secret sauce, right? So it's an open secret sauce. All right, that is the first thing. Of course, content is king. All right, someone wants to learn from you, be it offline, online, whatever. Ultimately, you are preparing him for something. The student has to learn. All right, or I do not know whether I should be using the term. The learner has to learn. All right. So of course, you have to give him the relevant content. And then of course, you have to deliver it in the best possible way so that it stays in his memory. And in fact, all of us, we talk about the shift in technology and all that. Okay, so there are surveys which say that whatever you learn there in the engineering colleges, that becomes more or less obsolete in the next 2 years. And most of the engineering colleges in India, US, they offer you a 4-year program. All right. So the most important thing is the ease with which you can learn. Okay, whether you learn to learn or not. All right. So there, of course, content definitely plays a role. Now, even here, okay, you have created a backdrop, okay, where we can see Animation Express and whatever. All right. So why was it needed? Why was it needed? Of course, we are all aware of this, that this is being organized by Animation Express with Wacom and Autodesk. So you want to create that impact. So of course, content is king, was king, okay, and will remain king, undoubtedly.
Yeah, with so many players in the market now and with the increase in competition, the only differentiation would be at the level of content and how seamlessly it is distributed, how seamlessly the tech works, and what is the engagement after the content, and how interactive is your content. We are at a level where it's content is just being passed on to you, but we have to make it interactive, and that will take content to the next level where it can actually become more meaningful and valuable to the students. And how that is going to be done is, I'm very excited to know that who will do that and what is going to happen in that space.
Yeah, the content is no doubt has always the king and will be the king always. The next level is when we are talking about e-learning, especially, it becomes more important that how the content is packaged, how it is presented, how much immersive that content is, whether that content, a good quality content, is packaged good enough to keep the learner or student glued to that content. That is very important. So that will create a complete different shift, the way technology is contributing towards the education system and making the content glow and transport the content at a speed and the technology is actually making the content immersive and interactive, as Anshu said. Yeah.
Yeah, taking
Thank
ahead
you.
from Rajiv, just adding to the point that Anshu said, we are at a juncture in edtech wherein, the immersive content or, a very well packaged content may attract a student for, some amount of time because the industry is fairly new. And, there are a lot of new technologies which are coming, which can make the may make the content more creative. And what happens is, a lot of people in edtech as well as from the teacher fraternity, we take usually creativity as the fancy thing. That is what it's always taken as. बहुत सुंदर लग रहा है, it is very animated and glowing and 3D and all. It definitely attracts the student at the beginning, but once you take the student, the whole journey of the student into picture, as Anshu said, interactivity is what matters. You show him a lot of fancy stuff and all, he would really enjoy it for a couple of months or even a year or so. When eventually everybody goes to that level of fanciness through all those tools, that is where it will matter that whether your content is interactive. And taking one level ahead from interactive, are you continuously taking the feedback loop? Because everybody has evolved from a place where we all have studied in an offline way, and we all have our own very strong hypothesis about certain things. It's very, very important to pilot a lot of things, experiment a lot of things, capture the data every day, because online gives us a huge power to actually know what's happening in every student's behavioral pattern. Rather than in an offline class, we all used to see that there are 100 kids and teacher was the king over there, whatever he has delivered, and it was more of a godly figure. Right now it is not. A student has the power to leave the classroom any moment. That's a huge change if I particularly talk about a live or a video or an edtech kind of a field, which did not used to happen. So why is he dropping out at that particular moment? Could you have kept him more engaged? And what do you mean by engagement? Are you actually mapping the entire data with the purpose that you intended that content to be? So it's very, very important to be in that feedback loop every time and keep on trying new things, because I won't say that there's a definite formula right now, and we will always evolve with the education. But still, I would say that you need to keep on experimenting and innovating, and then probably arriving at different types of recipes for different types of cohorts and students and subjects. The one recipe may not work. One type of content may not work for a second grader who is studying social studies and an 11th grader who is studying mathematics. the entire strategy, the entire product, the basic content pedagogy, everything may be entirely different. So definitely it's the king, and we need to approach it very selectively. When we talk about customization or personalization for a kid, we need to bring that customization and personalization in the content also. That's my belief.
So Anand, you've been in this space for a long time. First dealing with corporates, now you're going on to possibly masses. So what is your view? Is creativity very important as far as the content is concerned in e-education and e-learning?
So I think the table stakes have gone up in terms of content itself, right? I mean, overall, the choice of, and it's not just learning content, right? I mean, so digital content consumptions come in through an overload on the market. I mean, if you have platforms like TikTok, or YouTube pushing a whole load of digital content at people, their expectation on how engaging and entertaining content is going to be increases, right? So that's the first thing that we look at. So we don't assume that education lives in a silo and says that there is absolutely no bearing from outside in terms of what needs to come in. The second move that we're seeing is that a lot of the content work that's happened over the year has actually, unfortunately, first taken a broken system and then made that for everybody. So it's like if someone builds one piece of content on Pythagoras theorem, they believe that the next 10 million or 100 million people going to go through their content are going to learn Pythagoras theorem in the exact same way, which is exactly how our schooling system was set up, right? And then we've come in today to come in and say, listen, the schooling system is broken because we don't actually, value the individuality of people or the fact that different people learn differently. I think more so over the last 4 or 5 years, we've started seeing more tech come in to start talking about how we can start supporting people who learn differently, right? So creativity of content's hygiene factor, it's table stakes, it's gone up. But then I think it's going to increasingly become a commodity product, and it's going to be around the services around that are going to start defining success for commercial offering of content. And I don't think content alone, you could have fabulous content, right? We've seen companies that have fantastic content, probably have a couple of hundred views. And then you've got people who've got very, very poorly conceptualized content, right? And then you're amazed that it's got 16 million views on it. And you're like, okay, there's something else that needs to go in with it. Context is very important in terms of how we package this entire experience for people. But I believe that the biggest challenge for content for us is going to come in more from the social media platforms than from pure play education content.
Okay, so by that you mean user-generated educational content? Do you
A
mean
lot
that?
of user-generated content is going to start raising table stakes for commercial content houses like ourselves, saying that, as they increase the thing, we're going to have to show a significantly higher value add for the kind of operational efficiencies that we need to be running.
Great. Samit, your view on this?
I completely, agree to Anand and all of us. My view was content is not just a content, like the learning material, but it's a complete package. How you deliver it to the end user and their experience on it. I come from more of a visual effects background. Autodesk have been pioneers in visual effects, which have created blockbuster movies, which we have already named in. We had movies which had heavy VFX, jaw-dropping effects and wow types, but the content was weak. And what happened is, there was a perfect imbalance of things which never took off. So yes, of course, it's a mix of everything. The course material plus the right use of technology. I think we've seen the technology growing, in a much bigger way in the past few years, because first of all, it was just a video content where we changed the background. Then we had 3D and 2D in it. Then we had 3D in it. And now it's VR and MR. And I recently saw a WhatsApp clip where a teacher in Kerala, I guess it was, they had this MR, and technology in the classroom where she's talking about lion. The lion is all just standing next to her. So all these animals, and it's a very, very beautiful experience for the kids to train them. So their eyes will be on the course material for a longer duration rather than just getting distracted by looking at textbooks or images and all that stuff. So yeah, complete package really matters a lot. And of course, I highly say that content is always the king and always will be the king.
Yeah, Vinay, you've been one of the pioneers. Your group has been one of the pioneers in terms of textbook publishing and now going towards digital. So, what's your view on creativity? In you all used to just publish the same textbook every year. you know,
Well, I think, like some of you have already said, when we say what is the quality of content, I think the quality of content, the definition is very important. I mean, what do you mean by quality of the content? I think for me, the quality of content is whether it is serving the purpose it is supposed to do. So here, I mean, if the objective is that the child has to learn from it, if the child has learned from it, then it's good quality. If the child hasn't learned from it, it's not good quality. Whatever may be the animation level of that content. I think first is objective is extremely, extremely important. And the second thing, what is happening is we are moving from an era of this decade or a couple of decades back of no digital content to over flooding of digital content. So if you today, for example, want to search for photosynthesis on Google, you will have 110 videos of photosynthesis. There is a problem of plenty, right? So it is extremely important that the child gets the right and only the right content, which can serve that objective, which is a very, very difficult job now. The job has actually become difficult. While I think all the technology has really helped in creating engagement, in creating learning, for example, a human heart, the way you can explain it in a 3D format, you could never understand heart that way, right? But the question today is that given that learner who has that much only attention, how do you ensure what is the appropriate and right amount of content? And more importantly, what is the pedagogy behind it, which will ensure the appropriate learning at that level of learner? So those are the things which are extremely critical now, because the expectations from content have also changed. So now there are multiple expectations that you have from, for example, the content that you're making, it has to run in multiple formats. It has to work on social media, it has to work on mobile, it has to work on laptop, it has to work in a book also, right? Second, what you're trying to teach kids today is very different from what you were trying to teach them 20 years back. So that expectation has changed. Third, it is more a learner driven world. Earlier, the content used to be something which was a tool for teacher to teach. Now it is a tool for learner to learn on its own. So again, the pedagogy changes, right? So there's a huge amount of change which is happening. I mean, I'll give you a very basic example, which is out of context. Some of you feel, for example, all of us have read Lakshmi Singh book, right? Books are out of fashion these days. So we get feedback from students on books. So there are students who write to us. In a way, they're writing to Lakshmi Singh, and we forward that post to him. So there are students who write to Lakshmi Singh saying, "Sir, when we read our book, we feel that you're sitting in front of us and teaching us." So that is what a book does to a student. So it is not a fancy content. It is not a great 3D, but that books is written in such a way that you end up understanding science. So any content, I think, is the quality is dependent on the purpose it is serving. So that is the perspective that we have, and we have content across. So we have content in books, we have content online, we have content in digital devices, we have content on mobile. But objective is always very clear. Whom are we making it for, and whom are we presenting, and in what pedagogy is it going, so that it can drive the right teaching or learning outcomes. So for me, that is more important.
Great.
I agree
Anshu.
with Vinay. What I wanted to add for Vinay, for what Vinay was saying, is that the content should not be so creative that it overpowers the learning.
Exactly.
If you have a line in front of you or a 3D heart in front of you, you should not just be in awe of the design and animation of it. And the student forgets about learning about the arteries and the blood vessels and things like that. So it should not be distracting. The creativity should not distract the child away from learning.
Yeah, the ingredients should be carefully chosen. That depends for which subject, which grade, what kind of students or what kind of subjects are being taught. So it cannot be throughout at all the levels same. So the right mix is the right way.
Yeah. So Taran, you're from the IIT background where you probably are helping a lot of students with JE, and those guys have very high expectations, and kids have high expectations according to me. Anshu, they have high expectations of engaging and entertainment. So Taran, your view.
Yeah, so I would actually like to agree with Vinay here. I think we are too much obsessed with the content, like, packaging of the content, how great is the content. And we always say that content is the king. But I would like to add here, if content is the king, then the pedagogy is the kingmaker. You can't alone win this game with just the help of content with, very nice, fancy videos. You have to target the user in the right way, teach him in the right way at the right time. And that's why you see, you have very similar platforms. Let's not talk about education. Let's talk about something like social platforms. Let's talk about TikTok versus the 10 other apps. You see the engagement on TikTok is like at least 10 times the other platforms which are out there having very similar kind of content. But why is the TikTok able to crack that model? Because of the personalization. I think just with the help of content, I think content is the tool which we can use, but the personalization sits on the top of it, and that does all the work. And I have been seeing very amazing technology coming from China, and we might
Wow.
we might we might say that China is this and that, but when it comes to technology, I recently saw they made a virtual tutor. One of these Chinese apps, they are making a virtual tutor which is able to direct the content to the students and is able to teach like a real tutor itself. So that does the work of hand holding. So I think the technology with the use of artificial intelligence, I think we can direct the content and teach the student in the right way. I think that's the way forward, what I see.
Okay, so basically, you have a mascot who guides the student around, which is not a big thing at all. And using AI, Netflix does it brilliantly. So do the other OTT platforms. Coming down to Anshu, you're dealing with kids. They are very, very they suffer from attention deficit disorders. Most of the kids, ADD. Uh, so they require a lot of a live content. Flat, boring stuff will put them off.
Absolutely. And we are very cognizant about that.
Yeah.
So I'll try to give you a live example of what we did. So you will see a lot of educational apps teach letters to kids, ABCs to kids. And it involves tracing the A's or the B's on the iPad, on the tablet. So when we wanted to implement that in our app, it was not just with the objective of tick mark chalo abc dal dete, but it was more from how can I make this engaging for a child that a child will want to do it, because honestly it is boring for most kids to sit and learn or trace letters. So how can I make it engaging? And that is where our gamification or content or creativity comes into play. So what we did was we got inspired by one of the most popular games in the world, which is Pac-Man, and we based our letter tracing on a Pac-Man style game where while you're tracing, a little monster is eating beads on the way. So it's actually fun and it's actually engaging, and it'll keep a child want to learn that activity without the parent forcing the child to do it. The child will want to do it on her own. So that is where gamified learning, or where you have the intent of actually teaching a child the right thing the right way, it really helps and goes a long way in making retaining kids and increasing their engagement.
Great. So, what is the preferred content strategy for each of you all? Do you all, I know you all said the context, the kind of content you put out, targeted at the right audience, all that is in place. But let's look at it if you're having, visuals coming out there. Do you prefer 2D animation, flat visuals, or high-end 3D animations? And reasons for choosing either? Who'd like to take a shot at this? Who wants
So
to take a shot?
it depends. It depends a lot on the shelf life of the content in terms of the use case where it's going to come in, right? I mean,
Yeah.
so if you look at if you're doing stuff around schools and colleges, that's typically static content. It's not going to change. The content itself is not going to change. Like I said, Pythagoras theorem, you're not going to come up with a new version of Pythagoras theorem. Then you could probably invest a little bit more in terms of all the immersive features and stuff like that. If you look at corporate education markets, I mean, you have a little more rapid cycles of, let's say, their business processes, EHS, compliance-based training, right? It sounds a little more boring, but then have equally high stakes for businesses. Then the shelf life starts coming into question. So then you start looking at more flatter, quicker content. I think it's also important for us to see what kind of device environments people are coming in. One of the newer businesses that we launched, we have 98% of our learners coming in from mobile, right? So then suddenly it's a very different environment. You can't just lift and shift what we used to do for PC-based content and then say, oh, this is going to work phenomenally well in terms of interactivity, in terms of form factor, in terms of 2D or 3D content. People are then worried about, what kind of internet bandwidth is available, what kind of bandwidth consumption is there, memory on their phones. So there are a lot of other environment, a lot of other contextual things that we need to look at in terms of saying what is a consumption pattern going to look like, and where do we come in from there. And the last one that we typically like to look at is saying that is it going to actually people are going to be willing to pay more because you're going to do more, right? I mean, I think that's a very important test in commercialization of content. I mean, if it's not going to move the ticker, if it's not going to move, if the end consumer doesn't value it in terms of a purchase, we believe that it's not. You're actually destroying value of the product in terms of spending more money, but realizing the same amount of engagement from a learner or the outcome.
Taking it ahead from Anand, Anil. So basically, the problem that he spoke about is like the bandwidth and all coming specifically from a live category at Vedantu. See, we have been evolved from a place where the video content was very powerful, and we had to kind of not exactly replicate, but replicate a good level of visual plus appealing content on the live platform, and with the instructor over there. So being experimenting a lot in 2D and 3D animations, the way you said, 3D streaming or 3D rendering on a live platform nowadays, it's almost at the same stage that video streaming was around 5 years ago. The higher quality of 3D you want to render or stream in a live class, it would require high bandwidth from the student side as well as from the instructor side, and we are talking about a considerably high bandwidth. Otherwise, it would overall dilute the experience of the student. So we need to really take a very fine balance of wherever high amount of 3D is required or not. So for example, I'll tell you, say biology, a human skeleton or a heart may require a decent amount of 3D, and it would really help the teacher explain the thing very nicely if it can 360-degree rotate it or up and down rotate it and show all the body parts going inside into the body. But wherein physics projectile motion, compulsorily just to make a 3D, you'll make a 3D football, you'll make a 3D human being and make him kick over there. It may give a visual impact for a few seconds or minutes, but eventually, if you talk about the learning outcome, a basic 2D clean and neat graphic and an animation where a ball is thrown and a projectile motion is published over there, a student would have an almost similar or even better learning outcome with less distraction over there. So we need to be very careful with what do we want to go into 3D and what should we not go into 3D. Otherwise, as Anshu said that, it would really distract a kid, and बहुत बार ऐसा होता है that students would start actually playing with that thing and all that stuff. If you take 3D to yet another level is whether during the classroom or during the video content or something, can you make the student interact with the 3D? We have observed a lot in the class while the teacher is playing with the 3D. Can the student? There are like, because it's a continuous feedback forum, we keep receiving the inputs. So, ma'am, can I do it on my screen? Can you give me the link to actually me to rotate the heart and see? So yes, we are working on that, wherein you can hook the student for this, because it's very important for the student also to connect to the teacher and platform. So these things can help the students connect. And after that, once the connection is done with the instructor, because we are a heavy instructor led, content is enabler for the instructor, then you can probably take control of the class. And even if you show a normal textual slide, but you explain it very nicely, because he's aware that you have all those fancy things with you. So he starts trusting you in that matter. They are like, the god of content. They are like, so that trust is built. But then it's actually the important aspect is the learning outcome of the child. If he starts feeling after 2 lectures he's not scoring well in the school examination, or he's not remembering the answer, so it won't be much helpful for him to play with that 3D animation or something.
Thank you. Samit, your perspective on 2D
Cool.
versus
I
3D.
agree to most of, like, almost everyone, because it's important to know what technology we have to use to what kind of content and what kind of the end user who's going to absorb it. Not necessary that I think I missed the using this word, that not necessary that we have to use all the technology which is available today to teach ABCD. I'm like, it's really not necessary. As even Anshu said that people might start playing with it, and then you'll forget that this is a learning thing. I spoke to a lot of content creators, and when I asked them, like, what do you prefer to do in 3D, and what would you prefer to go with normal videos and stuff like that, they said that things which is like biology and all, where you have to go inside the heart, show pumping, veins and everything, makes sense. Secondly, there is content which has to be reused, like, if it has a larger shelf life, and we know that it's going to be reused again and again and again. For example, the Pac-Man is obviously a 2D character, but if it was a 3D character and you want to incorporate in all the different courses, it is always better to have a 3D, because you don't have to recreate, because 2D will take time to, to turn and have perspective and all that stuff. So anything that has larger shelf life can be reused again and again and again. uh, Absolutely, 3D is, I'm like the go-to thing. Secondly, if it's immersive, you have to have a VR environment where you have to have an immersive experience for the kid, and obviously makes sense. But yeah, it's not necessary that 3D is the wow factor. So push everything in 3D. Of course, it has to be decided what will make sense, what will appeal to the audience, and then have it. So there is always, like, content technology, there has to be somebody who has to decide. Like, if there is no the bridge is not there, then there is a high chance of we just going haywire and creating things not in the way which it has to be done, is what I feel.
Yeah, Vinay. So, you have a large student community using the platform that you have. So, do you believe that 3D is something which is an easier tool to facilitate learning? And keeping in mind what everyone has said.
Yeah. So I think, as most of you have said, the way I look at it is that, so for us, we have content right from books, InDesign, PDF to EPUB to 2D to 3D to animations to interactivities to AR and VR. So we have all kind of content available with us. The way we decide about the content, there are two, three factors. First is the age of the learner. For example, the kids that Anshu is targeting will have a very different kind of content vis-a-vis the kids studying that Karan is targeting, right? 12th class kid will understand in a very different way as compared to a second class kid. So there'll be more animation, more characters probably in the early years. But a 12th class kid won't like to see that kind of animation to understand maths, right? So one is the age of the learner. What segment are you targeting? Second thing is, as you said, subject. For example, I can use a lot of 3D animation while I'm teaching biology or chemistry or physics even, but it is very difficult for me to do if I'm solving linear equations, right? So it depends on the subject also. What is the best way to teach their subject? Third, and the way we look at it, we have this huge repository of the content. What we focus on is we focus on solutions which are made for certain specific segments. And depending on what that solution need, we have a mix and match. For example, the recent mobile learning app that we launched, LearnFlix. So it has videos, 3D animations for concept understanding. It has summaries and key points for revision. It has objective and subjective practice questions for practicing. It has assessments which are multiple choice, single word, subjective for different graded assessments. It has remedial. So for me, that solution is important, and that spiral pedagogy is important, which will reinforce learning at every stage. And for that, for me to achieve that, whatever component of content, whatever asset is required wherever, I will put that. Similarly, let's say for milestone. In milestone, we go to tier 3, tier 4 schools. Now I have to stream content on the app. Incidentally, very interestingly, our milestone is a hybrid curriculum. So we have books as well as digital. What happened in pandemic is the books couldn't reach on time, the schools were closed. So within 2 weeks, we brought the entire curriculum online. So all student books, all teacher handbooks, all digital content, all communication. So suddenly the entire content changed. From textbooks, kids were learning from ebooks on My Study Care app, right? But it required a lot of effort in terms of training the teachers on how to conduct an online class. See, it is easier said than done. Those teachers in a tier 4 town who don't even know how to conduct a proper class on a board. Now imagine those guys conducting a class online, right? So we have all kind of content, but what we focus is on whom are we making it for whom, and what is the solution that, and depending on that solution, we make a mix and match.
Yeah. So Vijay, what challenges, Vijay and Karan, do you all face in content creation, and all of you all? What are the challenges that are facing currently?
Yeah, so like as Vinay said, I think Vinay perfectly summed it up. It totally depends on the kind of customer you are targeting when you're creating the content. Because if you're targeting us like a junior school student, you might want to have like creative content and use maybe like augmented reality to bring in the engagement in a student to understand the concepts. but the same type of content wouldn't work for a IIT, JEE or NEET aspirant, right? Or maybe like a university student as well. So I think it totally depends on the kind of customer. Coming to the challenges which we face, I think it's totally like a hit and trial process, which we are also trying to see. Some kind of content, totally works with the student, but the same kind of content doesn't works in other chapters. Let me take a very particular example. Like when we teach vector and 3D geometry to students who are studying in 11th and 12th, they have a lot of problem in visualizing how vectors look like, and how do they plot in the 3D plane. And we try to teach them using pens and different stick and graph models, right? In that kind of scenario, you can always use some 3D models, and 3D animations would really work with that. But like as Vinay said, when you're teaching them linear equations, you can't use the same models to work around with that. You need a proper nice understanding of the concept. You don't need AR and VR for that. So I think the challenge is to figure out what kind of content works with what kind of topics or certain concepts. I think once that is figured out, I think the map is very easy, I guess.
See, let's take a VR example, MR example, or an AR example. So I'm an engineering student, or I'm a corporate, in which department could I be? Could I be in procurement? So in engineering, I want to, take me through the furnace, a 3D walkthrough through of a furnace, and it easily explains to me how a furnace functions, rather than a simple flat drawing. So VR and MR would be good there in procurement side. For instance, you have the logistics and the pipeline. You can actually take the person through it, people who are coming in, the new people who are joining the organization, and train them on how the process happens.
Like you're saying,
So VR and AR,
a lot of safety training, VR and AR is very good. I mean, you can go inside the plant, show them what is the problem. For example, if you're training people on safety requirements in a chemical plant, VR and AR can be an excellent tool for doing that. So yeah, you're right. There are many applications where AR and VR play a lot of
where bandwidth is not a restriction. For instance, for Anand, the clients he has, the bandwidth is not a restriction there.
Not for the corporate accounts. Not for the corporate accounts. No, bandwidth is not a restriction. But then the shelf life, cost of creation as a shelf life becomes a huge issue, right? So if you're talking to energy businesses, so we're working on a deal for European customer who's looking at offshore rigs and what kind of maintenance needs to be done for it. And they said the cost of sending an untrained engineer to the site is significantly high. So that means obviously the cost of remediation can, the ability for them to spend more on remediation is far higher. And then they start talking about, say, okay, can we have AR? Can we have VR? Can we have a little bit more, immersive kind of content? Because it's also the shelf life of the content's high, but then also the use case or the cost of not training an untrained person is going to be even higher, right? So those are the kind of trade-offs that we need to look at it in the prism of what's the business context or what's the learning outcome context. I mean, I know a lot of people spoke about that for school, but then in corporate education, VR, AR is it just an ego boost for, someone to come in and say, I want to do this too? Then you probably get a few pieces here and there. But then mainstream, again, it needs to have legs of value of its own rather than just have a newness factor to it.
Okay, so are you seeing it being applied a lot more in the corporate education sector,
in smaller and smaller segments? I mean, again, it's one of those spaces, and I'm always wary of tech that people say is going to be revolutionary and it's going to be a wave, and then they keep saying that for 7-10 years, and then you're like, hey, listen, that wave is not really coming, right? I mean, it's not going to be a tectonic wave of sorts that's going to kind of offset every form of content that we know. I think it'll have a niche space in the market. There will be consumers that will prefer it. There will be consumers that will say, hey, listen, this digital dizziness is real. We don't want to use it, or we don't derive enough value from it. I think there is a place for 3D, for AR, VR. Content has a very niche space. I'm not denying that at all. But I don't think you're going to see that as replacing 2D content in that sense of it and say, oh, there will never be any more 2D content. I think even in the corporate markets, there'll be a space, but it's not going to be a huge uptick to replace education as how we know.
So this is
a couple of AR games in Kidopia. And this is when the AR wave was taking off and Apple was really pushing all developers, and we also relented to it. and we put out these couple of two really amazing AR games. But personally, I feel that it's a little gimmicky for such small kids. It's not very intuitive because they have to hold the tablet in a certain way. There has to be proper light. So it's not very easy for them to use. So when you talk about preschool kids using the AR technology, it is, in my opinion, it's very, very easy for them to use.
Okay. So what are the challenges you guys are facing in production, content production these days?
Okay, so
Where are the challenges and what are the challenges?
I think the first challenge is the shelf life of content. The way technology is changing, the way formats are changing, it is very important to figure out what is the right format which can work on multiple devices, multiple ways of consumption, and can continue. I think second is time to market. I think time to market across has reduced a lot, and that's one thing which I really keep on stressing my content team to be creative about. What used to be a project plan for creating content 10 years back is no longer applicable today because the way
True.
time to market has really reduced. So that is the second challenge. I think the third challenge is, which is a constant challenge, is content creators having a deep understanding of the users. Sometimes what happens is we sit in our back-end offices and create great content without understanding whom are we creating for, who is going to use it, and how are they going to use it. So I think these are the three challenges I think we are facing as of now, and we continue to innovate and continue to create new ways of tackling these.
Yeah, Anil, adding on to a different perspective altogether, we are more or less, focused on self-consumption content for the student, what we are talking about. But in the K-12 market and the way we all have been brought up and our kids are being brought up is they are, heavily dependent on the instructor-led content for their growth in academics. So they basically, we all have seen that. Taking the example of Lakmeer Singh Manjeet Kaur, that Vinay. I'm a huge fan of that book myself during my days. I clearly remember, and my teaching stint also, I used to use it a lot because the way it is, written and everything is documented in that, scripted in that, it's like the teacher teaching you. And there are very less Lakmeer Singh Manjeet Kaur type books available, and so that's why we have all been dependent on our instructors and teachers to take us from level 1 to level 2. So when I talk about instructor led content, for me particularly, talking about Vedantu or being in this category, let's take the video side because it's again a self learning content. About the instructor led content, it's very, very important to understand and create content which is very fluidic and dynamic for your instructor. If you give him a particular script, it's what we believe very strongly is teaching is like cooking. You have a standard recipe. Laws of motion is a laws of motion. The definition would be a definition, and the standard set of IIT questions that you want to teach, you teach anyways, right? But the way they are being taught, जिस हिसाब से that cook is putting his own flavor into that same fixed recipe is what makes the difference in a classroom environment. So if my content is way too rigid and it includes each and everything that a person has to just read out or script it out, even after the training, I'm cutting out on the flavor of the teacher or the instructor that can anyways make the learning outcome of the child from a level to totally another level on the same content. So while creating that content, I need to be very a lot of thought has to be put in that if three different type of teachers, three different personalities, three different content delivery styles are going to use it, is it that fluidic? Is it that dynamic that this person will also use it in a very nice way and this person will also use it in a very, very nice way? So that is one major challenge because our major content is being used across India, across 100 teachers who are teaching on the same content. Everybody will have a very different point of view. So we always wish to create a very dynamic and fluidic content for the instructors to use. Just to add that point.
So going on to Vijay, what are the challenges you guys are facing on content creation?
Okay, all right. So GradeUp is a platform for live classes. Okay, probably 95% of the content which we generate, okay, is live. All right, and then there is one more thing, that almost 90 to 95% of the people who consume our content, they do it on mobile devices. All right. Now, there are certain challenges related to live sessions. Of course, you cannot do all that you can do. At least that is how I look at it. Whatever is possible, 2D, 3D animation is possible in case of recorded classes. Okay, that much may not be possible in case of live classes, one. and two, the amount of time which is available to you for a particular session. All right. At times something happens and then you have to react to it. It's like a news channel also these days. I'll give you one example. Like yesterday itself, the Indian Institutes of Management came with their notification for CAT 2020. All right. And within 10 minutes, we have to go live. So what can you do? You can just create a very base PPT, okay, can go live and actually present it to them. Okay, but here anyway, I do not think that 2D and 3D is required also. Okay. So one challenge is, of course, the amount of time you get. Of course, the economics is also there. All right. And second thing, the type of resources which you get, human resources I'm referring to, okay, who are actually interested in content creation. All right.
Okay.
Mostly those people who do well, those people who have been able to understand content very well. Okay, they achieve something in life and they move to a different level. Okay, such people are not available for you to create content. All right. So lack of quality human resources, I would say, and second, the time which you get to create content. And then, of course, we have already discussed the shelf life of content. Like, I do not know why again and again we give the example of Pythagoras theorem only. Probably because there was this very popular TV advertisement, okay, on Pythagoras theorem. So probably it appears that that is very badly stuck in our mind. All right. So of course, Pythagoras theorem is not going to change. So if you invest a lot of time, a lot of R&D, a lot of bandwidth, okay, working for that, that's okay. But what about current affairs? Okay, shelf life of current affairs mostly here, okay, as I mean, when it comes to Indian competitive examinations, okay, is 6 months at the most. So then you ask this question also to yourself that, okay, how much to invest, how much of time, money, okay, bandwidth to invest for something which is going to exist only for 6 months or will remain relevant only for the next 6 months.
Yeah, sure. I heard you all. So, in terms of, how much use of technology comes into your content creation? How much does the use of technology come in? How important is it? And what efficiencies are you all trying to achieve in your content production?
Yeah, Anil. So I would like to answer this question. So yeah, I think like as Sahil answered the last question. So I would like to add in that and probably answer this one. So basically, I think what are we headed to is more like creating small pieces of content where we can use our own algorithms and find the user cohort and direct sum that content up and personalize it according to the user. I think that's what I have seen a lot of new edtech companies are doing, that they are creating these small pieces of content, and based on the user they are able to personalize it and sum it up or break it up and present it to the user. I would like to, I was very impressed with this one, show on Netflix. So this is something called Dark Mirror, where you can, whenever a user can see and choose what he wants
Black Mirror.
happens in the story, right? So I think I'm very impressed by that thought, like as a user, I can, personalize the content according to myself, because now the content is not the instructor led. Now it's according to how the student consumes and how he wants it to be, sent according to him, right? So I think we have to probably try to figure out a way where we can, create small pieces of content and then personalize it according to the user. I see that's the way forward.
Great. There are user questions coming in, viewer questions coming in. There's one from an anonymous attendee. What is the one thing that has to be kept in mind if designing a digital curriculum for students?
Student.
Who's going to answer this?
Only one
We're
word.
deviating. Student. Okay. Anyone wants to go deeper than that?
The exact requirement of the student.
What is the one thing?
Yeah. The biggest thing I think is still about learning outcomes, right? I mean, it depends on application of learning outcomes, and we use this as an example when we talk about it. If I want to go get a medical procedure done for a loved one in my family, let's assume it's a cataract operation. I might go see a few videos online to understand what a cataract operation is, understand the basic functions of it. But there's no way in hell that I'm going to be anywhere close to being able to conduct a cataract operation myself, right? So the question comes up saying, how much of the knowledge do we expect them to come in? An outcome of the student or outcome of the learner, right? I mean, are we looking at it just from I know about the concept, or I can hold an intelligent conversation about it? or does it come out saying that I need to actually apply it in a monitored environment, or I need to be able to apply it in a completely unmonitored, unsupervised environment, right? That's the level of expertise that if you start looking at, I think that's where curriculum design starts coming in. It could be 5 minutes, it could be 5 days, right? But then it depends on what the outcome of the learning process needs to be.
Sure, thanks. Anyone else wants to add to that?
I think it would
You
be
s-
defining your objective and who your target student is. If it's a preschool kid, if it's a primary student, if it's a secondary student. Once you define your objective, what your objective is, then everything just harmoniously trickles down to that. So you make sure
Okay.
that you're doing the right thing.
Okay, great. So then there's Imran Desai who's asking a question. What's your perspective about teachers? The new format needs to be trained by a teacher, and keeping in mind the present state, implementing this will be a big task. So how are we looking at training the trainers? Who wants to take this up? How do you train the trainers?
I think I can take it because I think that is a very good question and very important one. And that will be one of the key challenges in implementing this policy, because kind of progressive changes that we are trying to achieve, holistic development of child, holistic measurement of performance, most of our teachers are not used to doing that. And we face this struggle day in, day out in Milestone, because which is a next generation holistic curriculum. And when we implement it in tier 2, tier 3 schools, so we have 10 interventions in a year where we help the teacher to implement the curriculum the way it has to be implemented. And for
Okay.
that, there's a huge support which is required from the management, because teacher motivation is also very critical. Today, let us say if I'm a teacher for last 20 years, I've been writing 10 lines on the board, kids are noting those, and I'm putting that in quiz. Now I'm being asked to present a video, to conduct an activity, to engage every child, to do certain experiential learning stuff. So it is a lot of work for me to learn, to understand, to exert. So it's a challenge at the motivation level, challenge at the knowledge level, challenge at the skill level. This will need a huge amount of hand holding and training for teachers. No doubt. That will be key to implementation of this policy.
Adding on to Vinay, what I feel is every time there's a problem, let's make the people who face the issue or something a part of the solution. It's very challenging to say. It's very easy to say, but actually challenging to implement is inside the training itself. There should be an embedded module of the content creation part, because once they're a part of the process, if we make them a part of the process, they would definitely be more attached to it, rather than otherwise there's always a gap between the content and the trainer, or the type of pedagogy that we fix over there, that this is how you have to teach, and then force it upon them, so they'll never be a part of that. And it will always be like it has been forced upon by the management or by the government or by the institute that we have to teach this, and there always be a to and fro blame game kind of a thing. So inside the training should be embedded a module wherein I'm not saying that every part they have to create, just let them go through the not the pain exactly, but the process of creation, so they should understand whatever content they've got to teach, what has gone into that, and what is the kind of things that a person had to do at the back end to provide them with this content. So let's make them a part of a module where we include them into the creation part.
Okay.
One of the biggest challenges is that 99% of the teachers who are available to you, okay, as someone said here, have been teaching offline for more than 20 years, 10 years, 5 years. All right. So there's online delivery. Okay, at least there in India has been there for at the most last 2.5 years. All right. So that shift from offline to online, okay, as we understand that if a teacher is teaching offline, okay, even if it's a crashing board, not many students will get up and leave the class, okay, because of the social norms also maybe. All right. But here, as probably Vinay suggested, that at a click of a button, he will disconnect with you. So you need to keep your students engaged. It's not only about, okay, the purposeful content, it's about the engagement as well. All right. And that engagement can be very unacademic also in nature. All right. So one of the challenges is that those people who have done something for a good number of years, right, to change their mindset and to make them believe that here engagement is a very important thing. Ultimately, no matter what you're delivering, if there are no people, okay, to watch you or to consume what you're offering to them, it's of almost no use, right? So, and then of course, inclusion of faculty members in the curriculum designed for their training also is, of course, extremely important. Otherwise, most of them, they think like this, that, oh, I've been doing it for the last 20 years, and now you're trying to tell me that how I have to do it. Of course.
Yeah, sure. That's the point you've got now. Coming down to Raji, there's a question directly to you guys. Let me just run through it. How much of an impact do the current trends have on your products? Then are your products used in remote learning? Are there any solutions for e-learning and remote teaching? Similar, this has been put even to Sumit from the audience.
Yeah, in fact, our products like graphic tablets, which have been widely used in content of creative content creation, especially in VFX and all. But of late, these are being extensively used for e-learning, and the adoption rate is much higher than what we expected 3 to 4 months back. I mean, it is surprising to see even at in remote areas, smaller tier C cities, the teachers and students, they are trying, they are experimenting, and we get huge numbers of calls, and our teams are supporting them how to connect, how to work, get the work done, how to adopt this technology very smoothly. So I mean, the adoption rate is so high, so fast, it is unbelievable, and it is happening. And it is most important is it is two-way. It's just not teacher to students. More and more students are adopting these technologies, input devices, so that interaction can be without distraction and very smooth. So the products are very much there, and they are very simple, and it is no more complicated. And I think very fast, even teachers are learning. The kind of questions what we get from them, I think within 5 to 10 minutes they are able to understand, and then say yes, it worked, and they feel so happy. So I think it is happening, and much faster than what we all imagine.
Okay, Sumit, from your side.
So yes, I still believe that somewhere or the other everyone has to adapt to technology, and the best example is during COVID situation. We said that teachers who are used to teaching on blackboards and whiteboards and never even thought of doing a Zoom session or video calls adapted it within a week. It was a struggle for week 10 days, but now they're so smooth that and they can take it to the next level. Now they have this confidence in them. Everywhere we've seen that technology will be a part of it. Like most of the, like I can see Vijay and Sahil have, Vijay has a green background, means this is definitely for a live session for sure. But things which are which are pre-recorded and like something which is very complicated, people had to shoot outside, but shooting is not a possible now, and a lot of content is now being done inside the box with the use of technology. And even though it was not meant for, they were forced to do it, and we don't know what the future is going to be, how it's going to be. And now it's comfortable that people are so used to working from home that they don't want to go out and do it, and they know that this can be the next normal. And even at Autodesk, as a technology partner, like technology company, we took initiative in helping people, like reaching out to the companies saying that, was, you guys are working from home, what is the help you need? Do you need work from home license, like something which is called as a home license, which is not charged, a license which they've already paid, and the license which is already sitting in office, but we give them additional license to use access from home. We bundled so many products together that the cost comes down. I know even Anand said that cost feasibility also matters a lot, and so we made it so affordable that the load of cost is no more that much at what it used to be. Secondly, the deadlines. We've seen that the complication have the complexity of everything has become more and more challenging, but the deadline has become more and more shorter, and we've seen that happening. So what do we need is faster technology. What we want has to be delivered in a much more faster way. So Sahil, to tell live streaming of 3D was very difficult in like a couple of years back, but now yes, it is possible A lot of game engines can do that, and we made sure that whatever is the need of the market, has to be fulfilled. And it's not just the software; it's a collaboration of hardware, software, technology, bandwidth. I know now. I think we'll see bandwidth issues being reduced because everyone is now moving towards that, and trying to have a better bandwidth. The technology companies are providing better bandwidth and faster bandwidth. So I don't think we'll see issues of bandwidth, and then that will go down drastically in the next few months or something like that.
Yeah, so you've got Geo Fiber rolling out. You've got the 5G license being worked on. Geo's been asking for a 5G license. So that's going to change a lot of the way video is consumed, and costs they've been bringing down. Data costs have come down.
Yeah.
So I think that's, but we're looking at maybe, plus, broadband providers have started providing broadband everywhere. So that problem of having bandwidth is going to be, it will take time, but it's going to go away. Correct me if I'm wrong, all of you.
Yeah. It has really improved a lot, and that's why we are seeing a huge surge in the number of users and students attending classes and all. So it's definitely going to be a small time problem.
And also, the Indian government is pushing e-learning. They're
Yeah.
saying they have to get it. We have to get prepared for that going forward. So, how much of a factor is that going to play? The impetus that the government is giving towards digitization and Anand, you want to take a shot?
It's obviously going to be huge, right? I mean, when you're looking at digitization from a content provider perspective, it's going to be huge, especially when government starts mandating, and when situations like pandemic kind of becoming that explosive thing to come in and do that. But on the consumer side of the world, you have another issue in terms of saying, I mean, if someone's in a blue collar job and they have 3 kids, how are they going to get 3 devices at home to have their kids go through online education? So I think there's still going to be a consumption side challenge when it comes to digital learning at mass scale, especially when you're looking at government policy driving adoption, right? I think most of our businesses today aren't driven basis government policy, but are basis driven free market economics that's going to be able to drive consumption patterns. When government starts getting involved and you're expecting it to become a systemic change at the ground level, that's probably a little while away till you start seeing smart devices being a little more freely available at the strata that the government's actually trying to create changes at.
Okay, that's a good point. Now, there's questions from Poonam Mondal. How do you deal with visually impaired students in current times? What should be the attractive quality of content for them? Is it more audio driven? Or how do you deal with visually impaired students? Who wants to take a stab at this?
I think we can do a lot of homeschool kits for them. Homeschooling is coming out as a big driver now. It's just increasing in numbers. And of course,
Okay.
paired with audio can be served in a more creative manner than it already is being, and make it more interactive with the homeschool kids.
Okay. Anyone else? Any other innovations you can think of dealing with the visually impaired or the other impaired? There could be other impaired. There could be voice impaired.
So I guess visually impaired. I mean, you need to start seeing, what level of visual impairness is there. Is it total or is it partial impairment? And I think there's a lot of devices that have started coming up. That start giving them. I mean, there's some smartphone that start coming back that give them even the ability to, to travel within the city on their own. It gives them a kind of a beep, and it gives them wands with GPSs and stuff like that for people who have partial mobility with that kind of impairment. But then coming back to learning, I think there isn't a one size fits all answer to that. But then there are, again, if you're looking at that as a space that you want to address, I think there's a lot that can be done within the digital space. I mean, podcasts, audio content is great. Again, the ability to come in. I mean, if they're visual impairments, smaller device screens are not going to be the best option. You probably want to think of a larger format in terms of, again, it's about how do they interact and converse with the content, right? It need not always be visual. It can be audio. It can be conversational. I mean, with a lot of chatbots that you have today, it can be a lot of conversational content. I could sit down and have a conversation with a virtual assistant that's going to take me through understanding. I'm now going to say current affairs because Vijay doesn't like Pythagoras theorem, so I'm going to say current affairs, right? But if I want to know what's been happening in the world of current affairs, I think chatbot AI-based tools and learning assistants would probably be the best way to go for people with visual impair.
Yeah. So more and more questions are coming up. There's one from Balaji Sakamuri to Sahil. What impact Vedant? Okay, let me read the question. How will impact Vedantu on entire tech industry, and how do you feel Vedantu is among the top 10 most valued edtech startups in the world? And why do you think? If you got the question.
Yeah, so basically, really, fortunate enough to be that. Yes, we recently had a read at the report that we are among the top 10 most valued tech in the world, and obviously, it's a huge opportunity for us to create that impact. Around all the categories, around around the different curriculums and different countries across the world. We have been really leading this charge of live tutoring since last 5 odd years, when live tutoring was it was really pushed away, and it was all the video content and the self consumption content which was leading the way. But we have been those pioneers, and we wish to take this the recent fundraise as well as the investments that we have been getting, investing a lot into technology and content both, and taking this across the world. And specifically we wish to create content and products not on a generalized level. Basically, that entire K-12 will be using this technology or this kind of content, but using heavy data insights to actually arrive at the right pedagogies, right content, right technology for the different kinds of users in different kinds of subjects, and the courses that they enroll. Because being into edtech and live, what we have seen is the amount of time that the student spends on these platforms, the patience levels are really less. It's not like an offline anymore, wherein you have enrolled for a course and next 6 months you are like sitting tight with that teacher and doing that course. If you don't like it, you go away with that. It's a heavy consumer centric and a student centric industry and a learner centric industry. So we need to be very careful that we can teach the same topic in like 10 hours, and we can also deliver the same topic in like 1 hour for particularly an IIT JEE kind of a student who enrolls for a crash course. So we need to particularly design the entire product and aspect that, are we serving the learning outcome need of that student who needs to do laws of motion in 1 hour versus the student who can do laws of motion in like 15 hours. He has that ample amount of time. He has just begun his class 11th and all. So using all these insights, you definitely want to create that impact at a very larger scale, using tech and content going hand in hand.
Yeah, so there's more questions coming. There's one from Neha Mehta. Has work from home affected content production, coordination between content creation teams, etc. in this pandemic? Somebody else wants to take it?
Not in case of
Anand.
Greater, at least. Not in the case of Greater. Okay, so
Okay.
we are a team of more than 700 people working from 700 different locations. All right, the work has not got impacted. Okay, content has not got impacted. All the teachers, all the content creators, they all adapted, right? The new normal, okay, very fast, and yes, absolutely no negative impact, at least.
Anand, what about you? And Sahil, Taran, Vinay, Samant, and Anshu, have you got? And if Rajiv is around, have you got indication
impact.
from?
I think things are as usual, no impact. People have managed.
Yeah, things have really actually, productivity has increased massively. The meetings in the office used to start 10 to 15 minutes late, to be very honest, moving from one office to another office and all. And we have like 5,000 employees working from home, including the sales force. And, Vedantu being a completely online sector, it was just an extension of our, delivery methodology. We extended the same to the entire employees. And, when we thought that we can teach the students online and in a pure 100% online way, why can't we do our work online? So that was the mission, and we have really been very productive in that. And the only poor point that I feel about this is there are a lot of people who have joined in my team itself in the last 3 to 4 months. The way we have expanded in a lot of portfolios, the interaction and the physical touch that we all used to have, a joining party or a gupshup kind of a session with all of them, it really gets tough now. And organizing those birthday cake cuttings on Zoom and having those sessions at Zoom or Hangouts are really they're good, but obviously that touch aspect is missing, which is one point that I would feel is not there. But yes, regarding the work thing, it has improved, I would say. The efficiencies and productivity has gone up.
Sure, Anand, in your case?
Yeah, I mean the same thing, right? I mean, tools and technology made it far easier for people to collaborate. There was obviously the immediate first couple of weeks of, oh my God, what's going to happen? Then you go through the 7 stages of grief, and then I think it was pretty quick and accelerated for people to get used to it. But we see this as a small blip, right? I think we would love to still go back to a physical office, and people engagement is still important. So I think there's going to be it's not going to be completely work from home, but I think once this eases up, we're going to see a little bit more flexibility, but it's taught us new practices for sure.
We don't know when it's going to ease up, though. It could be 3 months, it could be 2 months, it could be 7 months, it could be till next summer.
Even if you take a maximum of a year, what's a year in the life of a company, right? It's still going to ease up at some point in time. So I'm just saying that we believe that, I think we've learned new practices like most other companies in terms of remote collaboration and the ability to work remotely. I think we've sure as hell learned that very, very well. But I think when it opens, I think we'd find a little bit more balance between one end to the other end.
So let's say COVID-19 goes away tomorrow. All right. So my question to Anand is that what percent of your work, will remain work from home, and what percent would you want to go back to the office?
Well, technically, now that you have already done that, we are already doing most of, again, we have a series of business, but if you look at our digital learning business, we're already doing 100% work from home. Can we continue doing that? Yes, theoretically, we can continue doing that. But then I think more from a culture and org building priority, I think we would look at least about 20-30% of our teams coming back through some form of physical engagement and interaction.
Okay, but still 70% of it would remain work from home, right?
I think statistically, I'm saying that there's going to be a majority of it that we'd still look at continuing work from home because of the efficiencies we get. We live in Bangalore, so traffic is a topic of its own. So it's a huge advantage. It gives us at least 2-3 hours a day in our, just not having to get out of our house. But I do think that over a period of time, there'll be some normalcy that will come in. It won't be at 100% in terms of where we are right now. I wouldn't want it to be at 100%.
So I would just like to add, because as a lot of companies are now looking towards giving the comfort level to every employees, you can work from home. It's not the mandate that you have to come to office unless you have to use machinery and something like that. If your job is getting done on a laptop or a PC or something like that, you're good to travel anywhere and work. So what you need is basically collaboration and connectivity among your team. If that is sorted, it really doesn't matter where you want to work, where you want to sit and work. It's basically like I'm 4 days I'm at home and I'm bored. I want to go to office so that I can meet Taran, I can meet Sahil, and just have a good lunch together and come back. It is a feel good factor. It's like a vacation for one day going to office rather than sitting at home and working once a month, which we used to do that before. So, and of course, technology, I'm just getting back to technology is why is because as you guys, a lot of content providers made the content free for the initial COVID situation where you wanted your end users to get some kind of free education for the first few months and something like that. Even as a technology partner, we had a cloud-based software which was primarily for collaborating all the employees together. It's called a shotgun, of course. So we made it free for 2 months so that we didn't wanted our end users who are working and from home and trying to figure out how do we sort this out. At least they have a collaboration tool free for them, for at least 2 months. So these kind of things help them in the initial stage, and now they're all set. They can work from anywhere they want. I think that's going to be the new normal.
Okay, so there's more questions coming up. They seem to be very active and very engaged audience out there. So they want. One second. There was a lot of irritation there was some interference. So how do each of you picture the education system in the next 5 years? And secondly, how will the technology companies like Wacom and Autodesk be engaged in the ecosystem? So each of you all can have a say on this.
Yeah, so I'll take it up, I guess, this question. So I think we have already seen augmented reality and virtual reality taking up, and probably this will become mainstream. And recently I came across this video of, this AR like lenses, right? where you can just wear this AR glasses and you can just, use all your apps and, all at one place. So I think this might become mainstream in coming 5 years. I think this is very much possible. And I think there are some, it does need some technological advancement and
So
infrastructure.
I'm going to interrupt you, Taran, because Geo Glass was displayed at the annual general meeting of Reliance.
Yeah.
That's something which they are really looking at pushing in a big way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
continue. Yeah.
Yeah. So Geo glasses, and I also see there are other startups who are equally making other AR glasses. I think this might become mainstream in the next 5 years, and this might be very much possible, given that we might have that, the network bandwidth and all these infrastructure development, they do need to take place. And I think this might become very much mainstream.
Anyone else wants to take a shot? Anand, how do you visualize the education system in 5 years? Each of you will take a shot at it.
I think obviously, 5G is going to do a lot of good in terms of internet speeds, and I mean we're going to have to reimagine the world with 5G, because if 4G is already brought in this kind of engagement, I mean the kind of world that we're going to be in with faster bandwidth, faster device penetration is going to be far larger. We still keep a huge eye on consumer internet user-generated content. And we think that space kind of is an early indicator to saying how digital content would change for something like the education space. I don't think education disruption per se is going to happen within the industry for the exact same reasons, because we've all built it on our own belief system. I think the biggest challenges for the education system will come in from outside. So you'd probably see device players, you'd probably see people like this Geo Glass, which is a revision of the Google Glass coming back, trying to challenge the kind of user interfaces we're going to see. And the end result is going to be a mishmash of that. We don't think it's going to be in one particular direction. And I think there's going to be space for multiple players over there.
Great.
One
Anshu?
major, sorry.
Sorry, Anshu. She hasn't spoken for a while. We
Yeah.
haven't heard a feminine voice for some time.
I think for us, the biggest shift would be that kids will start having their own devices rather than relying on their parents' smartphones and things like that. Because right now, that is a big deterrence for us, because parents are busy on their smartphones and then the child wants it for their entertainment. So, I think this whole e-learning shift will force, or parents will be more open-minded about investing in a tablet for their child's learning. That will be a big shift.
Okay. Sahil?
Yeah, adding on to what Anshu said, just add on to that point. What we feel right now also, even in online or in edtech or, in the previous offline versions that we all operated at, it was we who decided, what to teach and how to teach and what are the pedagogies that we'll be following basis on our hypothesis. Next 5 years, as we see in the education policy also, as well as with the more edtech things coming up, I think education would become much more democratized, and it would be the student who would be at the center, who would be able to decide which courses are optimum for him, which kind of teacher, which kind of content, which kind of pedagogy he would be, comfortable learning with. So he would, through various technological mediums and platforms and, edtech companies, as well as the government policies, he would become much more powerful in deciding what is right for him to consume. So it would be more going towards that democratic way rather than be imposing our thought processes on the children.
Great. Who else wants to take a shot? Continue.
I believe we do not yet know what 70% of it would be. Okay. 5 years down the line, we probably cannot even guess what 70% of it would be. That is what I have to say.
Okay.
It will become much more democratic, yes.
Yeah.
Of course. Okay. But looking at the pace of technology and other things, I do not think we're in a position to guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
What I feel is, technology has been evolving and it will evolve, and then the end user, of course, will decide, as Sahil said, whether I want to choose this or that, what is comfortable for me. What technology company does is basically we want to make sure that the content, the people who are creating content, we make things easy for them. Like, they have to have the right kind of technology to create content and to deliver content. And when they deliver, as I said, everything has evolved. throughout the years. And I think 5 years later, right now we've been telling that, I miss my colleagues, being with my colleague, having coffee, that's basically the immersive thing which is lacking now. The next 5 years, I think, the education will be like, all the students, the feel will be like they're sitting in a classroom with all their friends, but they're still at home. I'm like, it's just the, the next part of Black Mirror, which Taran said. But I can see that, moving forward very soon.
See, I'll tell you, I experienced a virtual exhibition cum seminar recently, where I actually had a lobby, where I actually had exhibitors. I went to it was a fantasy sports conference where they had exhibitors, virtual. Everything was virtual. So I could walk into a conference room, then I could walk into an exhibition areas. I could go and there was a chatbot. There was not a chatbot, there was a virtual figure talking to me there.
Talking to you.
Then and telling me that I could download videos, and I could ask them questions. They would answer me. I could download documents. So and it's a virtual world. It was a virtual conference cum exhibition. And I could pop questions. And this was in India. It was a fantasy sports conference in India. So if that's the way conferences and exhibitions are going, I don't know what education could be. You could have virtual classrooms. I think we need to let our imagination go wild and hopefully go in that direction. Maybe some edtech startup will come with that solution. Who knows?
True.
Yeah,
Who knows? I mean,
absolutely. It is hard to guess right now the pace and the direction in which technology is going. I think it is unpredictable at this moment. One can imagine right now that MR, VR, AR can become a mainstream, but you never know. This can definitely be a future we can see, but there could be completely different ways. Ultimately, user will decide, and future will decide. Yeah.
anyway, Taran, any last points? And Vinay, any last points before we wrap up? All of y'all,
Well,
come
I
up with
think
your last points.
obviously education will become more online. Especially in higher education, it will be very significant change. Schooling still will be probably a hybrid, a mix of school and online. And you will have multiple formats of content consumption. It will become more flexible and democratized. I think those are the things I think.
Okay, Taran, since you have to leave.
Yeah, so I think my take on this is probably, I think we will be seeing a new revolution in 5 years. Probably AR and VR taking up the edtech space, and probably one big thing which I see happening is many teachers will get replaced. I think we'll have more of AI-driven teachers, which I have like talked about, like Chinese companies are doing
Sure.
that. So we might have that maybe in like mainstream in the next 5 to 10 years.
Great. Yeah, okay, it's been wonderful chatting with you all. Thank you for the time you'll have given us. I hope it's been useful for you all and it's been engaging. And thank you to the audience for being here. Have a wonderful time. Goodbye to all of you all. Thank you very
so
much.
much.
All of you all.
Thank you so much, Anil. Thank you, everyone.
Bye bye.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
thanks.
Bye bye. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye bye.